Internet Escorts, a return to Gilgo Beach continues. Here again is Richard French.
Welcome back to our special report. It is called Covenant House, and its mission simply to help young people in crisis transition from an often dangerous life on the streets into a normal life. Now, there are branches of Covenant House in many major American cities, and among those, the organization helps every day former prostitutes and others sadly involved in the sex trade, not unlike the victims of Gilgo Beach. For the protection and safety of those who often spend up to 30 days undergoing counseling and treatment, we are not revealing the location of the Covenant House we visited for this report. Outside, a visitor to this Covenant House or an incoming victim fresh off the streets is greeted by this long, colorful mural painted by former residents. It sends a colorful message of hope. Inside the intake office, these admitted on this day are identified only by description, not by name. Some have been victimized by pimps or others in the sex trade for years.
Every time a young person doesn't find a bed either at any of the city shelters, there is a pimp waiting to step in.
It is an industry which seems to have little concern about gender or race, as long as the individual, whether straight, gay, lesbian, or transgendered, turns tricks and brings in cold, hard, and untaxable cash every single day.
One of the things that we realize is sometimes people come in, they're a little lost in terms of what's possible because they're fleeing something, oftentimes fleeing perpetrators or pimps or those who have been hurting them in some way, and they need that help finding the forest from the trees. And what we usually are able to do is help them start realizing that there's a future out there that we can reconnect them with. And it's amazing once you get kids seeing that, the dreams come out pretty quickly. They all have dreams. They want to be something in their lives, and part of our job is helping them to get back to that place where they realize that there's something very positive for them in the future.
In a study conducted by Covenant House, researchers found that nearly 15% of youth in a random sample had experienced some form of sexual trafficking and victimization. The study also found that an additional 8% all engaged in survival sex. That means sex is a means of obtaining basic necessities such as food, clothing, and shelter.
What I saw was a progression many times. Young women who were extremely desperate. You know, they had a room and they needed money to pay the rent, sometimes money to care for younger siblings. And what they would start with stripping because it was they felt less risky, less dangerous. And then slowly the stripping would change to sex with certain customers, and then the traffickers would see who and prey on someone who's in this situation. So at a point that you get to a point where there felt like there was no way out. But I definitely saw this progression where out of sheer desperation, it would start with stripping and it would lead to something else.
For at least 10 victims, that something else led to Gilgo Beach. As you heard earlier in this program, the first bodies were discovered when prostitute Shannan Gilbert went missing. Then, on December 13th of 2011, exactly 1 year after the remains of the other women were found, the search for Gilbert was over.
We have this day at approximately 9:14 a.m. located a set of skeletal remains we believe at this time to belong to the missing Shannan Gilbert.
Officials positively identified the remains as those of Shannan Gilbert, but there was something else. Something that was even harder for Mary Gilbert and many others to believe, as police described the marshy area and floated a theory that Gilbert was not the victim of a serial killer at all. Police now speculated openly that Gilbert had actually died accidentally by becoming mired in the marsh.
We've had officers abruptly drop to their waist or deeper in that muck, essentially like quicksand, and they've been unable to extricate themselves without the assistance of fellow officers.
Meanwhile, the questions continue to be asked, not only about Gilbert's case, but about the many others, the 10 victims whose remains were found along Gilgo Beach and Ocean Parkway, and also about how many killers may be responsible.
We study in criminology these cases all the time, and we have never seen anything quite like this.
And the internet continues to be one of the principal ways in which to sell sex.
Now Backpage is the big target of scorn and criticism, but I think it's clear to everyone that if Backpage went away tomorrow, there'd be a dozen websites ready to pick up the slack.
There is no question that the internet continues to be one of the principal ways, if not the largest single way, in which to sell sex.
Still to come on this RFL special report, When the Dam Breaks. Some final words from Angel as she offers emotional advice on how others can escape prostitution too.
You gotta want more for yourself. That's all it boils down to. There's a lot of bad people out here. You gotta be careful who to trust.